Isn't it beautiful? Amazing. Let's get a cheeseburger. Imagine a game about the dread of figuring out where you are, while every place you visit looks more and more alike. You move from one city to the next, but everything looks the same. You want to know where you are, you have to find out. You're sure you've been here before. You remember that building, that fluorescent logo. You've been here before, you're sure. You've seen this, but it's all the same, but different. Each map feels like somewhere new, you know it's somewhere new, yet nothing really changes. You're looking for clues in this sea of sameness. This game is called GeoGuessr. GeoGuessr in many ways is a very simple game. It drops you somewhere on Earth, you see through the eyes of Google Street View, and your task is to find out where you are. You spin the camera, and some modes you can move around, and you start looking for clues. A language you recognize, a URL on a billboard, specific plants. With enough practice, you get frighteningly good at this. People are able to tell what country they're in just from the type of asphalt that's used, or from the shape of a power line. But the longer you play, the stranger it gets. You start seeing patterns and repetition all over the place. Not because you're in the same city again, but because everywhere you land, it just starts feeling familiar. The same fast food chains, the same supermarkets, the same architecture. Especially in modern city centers, every location looks like the memory of another one, as if the entire world were designed by the same few people. And if you follow that line of thinking, it stops being a game and more like an experiment. What happens if you can experience the whole planet and it all looks the same? We have access to the collective archives of Google Street View, and we're able to see more of the world than any generation before us. But playing reveals something about the world that a simple map by itself cannot, that a lot of it is just repetition. And I find that really disturbing. So in this video, let's talk about horror, about sameness, where it comes from, why it's there, what it does to us, and why GeoGuessr may be a cosmic horror game. If you travel a lot, you know the feeling. Stepping out of a train station in a city you've never been to, but immediately being able to find the familiar. A McDonald's around the corner, a Zara somewhere, a Starbucks. There's a strange comfort in modern travel. So I've been working on this video for a while now, and I thought releasing it around Halloween would be good timing for SEO and geo and all of that. The script was nearing 40 pages in length at this point, and I didn't even put all of my ideas that I had in yet. There was a lot of time pressure that I just put on myself. I mean, nobody's waiting specifically for a video on why GeoGuessr is a horror game. So I don't actually know why I'm stressing so much about this. And the project I had in mind was just turning out to be way too big. Strange comfort in modern travel. You can land anywhere and immediately know where to get your next coffee. It's reassuring, predictable, efficient. But the more you notice the sameness, the more it starts feeling uncanny. A lot of spaces we come across while traveling are kind of non-places, so to speak. Airports, shopping malls, hotel lobbies, highway rest stops. They're designed not to represent a culture, but almost to erase it. To move people through, not to hold them in. They're functional, frictionless, and interchangeable. A non-place doesn't ask you to belong or take anything with you, except maybe some overpriced souvenirs. It asks you to just pass through without incident. And once you see that pattern, it's hard to unsee it. The airport or train station leads into a shopping mall. The mall merges into the city center with a big shopping street. All these places have the same fluorescent lighting, the same inoffensive neutral pop playlists, the same smell of disinfectant and coffee. You can exist here, but you can't really arrive here. GeoGuessr, which should be about exploring the unfamiliar, mirrors this to an extent. When the camera drops you somewhere random, it can often feel like a place you've already visited, which is the base sensation that got me into doing this video, to be fair. The first instinct is, oh, have I been here? Because if you've been to a couple of cities, it kind of feels like the streets, the signs, the storefronts, they're all copies of the same template. The game's randomness exposes how standardized the world has become. The exact brands change. There might be a different fast food chain, but you can be sure there will be one. Repeating patterns, and no matter where in the world it drops you, you see the same basic structure. You'll never be lost again, but you'd also never arrive anywhere. Of course, when you start paying attention, the sameness isn't random, it's designed. Practically every modern cafe, office building, apartment complex, follows the same aesthetic code. Glass, gray, wood accents, neutral lighting, a few plants, a visual language of safety. Nothing too strange, nothing that could age badly, nothing that might offend a future tenant. The result is a city that looks copy-paste. If you're optimistic, you can call this timeless design. But timeless often means placeless. These are spaces that often feel familiar before you even enter them, so you don't have to actually think, you can just move through them automatically. None of this is intentionally evil, of course, it's optimization. It works, it's somewhat future-proof, and of course, it's good for business. Every square meter is designed for flow, clarity, and profit. At first, sameness feels safe. Familiar architecture, familiar music, familiar signs. But if you stare long enough into the city, comfort begins to bend into something else, and the city stares back at you. Every Starbucks window starts to reflect another Starbucks window, until you can't tell which one you're in. The world becomes a hall of mirrors, each reflection slightly off, slightly wrong. I would go out and film the cathedral and turn the camera over to see the McDonald's, which I thought it was deep at the moment. Oh, look at this marvel of architecture. Let's get a cheeseburger. That would be like the hook in the beginning of the video. Something a little more interesting than just starting with a quote. And then I would start with a quote, 2 or 3 sentences from Lovecraft from different works. The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear. And the oldest and strongest fear is fear of the unknown. You know the feeling when there's just so much to do and there's some passion project you started but never really get to finish because it just takes so much time and there's just more and more to do, and everyday tasks just keep piling up and it's all the same and the same and the same every day. The main core I wanted to get is basically GeoGuessr is a cosmic horror game. When you play it, there's certain regions and certain things that definitely fit my thesis, but it would also be a bunch of stuff where you could say, oh no, this is specifically this country, this is specifically this city, so I don't even know if my thesis holds up, because there's just so much to consider when talking about the world and trying to make an argument that fits for the world as a whole. It's kind of same tasks, just in a bigger scale, and you keep doing them, and you think, any day now I'm gonna do the passion project I really want to do. I'm gonna do my hobby again, I'm gonna go to the gym, I'm gonna do something more. You start with a good idea, or what you think is a good idea, and then you try to develop it and go further and further and further. And then you are 10 pages, 20 pages, weeks and weeks in, and you realize maybe the idea falls apart at the very beginning, your very core. Maybe not every city is McDonald's and Burger King. Maybe I'm just going at this from a very Western and European perspective. And then you get home and you watch the same TV show and you make the same food, and you go to bed. I was bouncing back and forth between this is a really good idea and maybe something deep that I observe in the world that I want to share, and then back to this is kind of stupid and probably not even true if you At some point it all starts to blur together. Cities don't feel like destinations anymore, but just the next level in the same game. The same handful of assets, reused, repurposed, and rearranged until everything becomes overexposure. We built a planet that runs on copy and paste. Architectural styles lean more and more into practical and corporate, and the result is a single global aesthetic rendered in 1,000 slightly different local dialects. The remaining cultural signifiers become franchised. The world has franchised itself. It's tempting to complain about cultural loss, but maybe it's something stranger. A new stage of world building where culture has learned to reproduce itself so efficiently that originality became redundant. A self-replicating... There was a pigeon outside. A self-replicating civilization designed to scale. Wait, wasn't this video about Lovecraft? If you type in Lovecraftian into Steam or Google or anywhere, you'll get a whole aesthetic. fog, tentacles, candlelight, a detective in a trench coat staring at something unspeakable that still looks suspiciously like an octopus. Somewhere along the way, Lovecraftian stopped describing an idea and started describing a texture pack. It became a checklist. Fish people? Check. Cultists whispering in Latin? Check. Sanity meter that shakes the screen when you look at forbidden knowledge? Check. The irony is that this kind of Lovecraftian design delivers exactly the opposite of what Lovecraft wrote about. His terror came from scale, from the mind-breaking vastness of things that didn't care whether you understood them. But pop culture took the byproducts, the slime, the tentacles, the geometry, the cult robes, and made them the point. Inability to understand turned into genre. And when you've seen enough of these games, you start to realize the scariest thing about them isn't the monsters, it's how predictable they've become. Okay, let's talk about Lovecraft. I do think I have a point here that a lot of what's seen as Lovecraftian in like modern pop culture is centered around tentacles and monsters, especially in games and certain shows. Like you want the theming, like the visuals of Lovecraftian horror, so you put in your tentacle monsters and elder gods, but also you still have to provide a power fantasy to the player. And I think that takes away the core of what Lovecraftian horror is or should be. The real terror in Lovecraft was never the monsters, it was the revelation that there is no story at all. Because at least to me, Lovecraftian horror is especially the horror of scale and the horror of like realizing scale. And I think the human mind in a way is not prepared to understand scale. The universe just doesn't care what you want or what you know, it just continues. A character or the player thinking that they have some sort of control and understanding of the world and how it works, then that illusion being shattered by encountering something or learning something about how small their role and their level of control and understanding is in the grander scheme. And I think this is something that's really cool and really interesting if done well. The human perspective, the comforting idea that the world is happening to us, suddenly collapses. It's not even about us being small, it's about us not being the reference point for the universe. In that sense, cosmic horror or Lovecraftian horror isn't about the creature, it's about realizing that the creature doesn't matter, that there is no plot. It's horror by subtraction. Fear born from the absence of structure. So what I really like about Lovecraft is not understanding. I was listening to The Mountain of Madness as an audiobook. You know how it is when you listen to an audiobook, sometimes your mind just drifts away a little and you come back and you have no idea what's going on. And I was scrolling back, but after a while I realized that it's actually much nicer to just be confused. It lends itself really well to that in a way, at least for me. I had a really interesting experience. And I think there's something there. Maybe I'm just tired. I am really tired. Which brings us back to GeoGuessr, because in its own way, it brings us back to the same realization. You can see everything, you can move anywhere, the entire planet unfolds at your fingertips. A digital totality so vast it cancels itself out, omniscient, but meaningless. Maybe that is the modern version of cosmic horror. Not the terror of an unseen god, but the quiet realization that there isn't one, and that everything still functions perfectly without it. According to Lovecraft, the most merciful thing in the world is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. And I read that as meaning that ignorance protects us in a way. Mystery keeps us sane. The cathedral towers over the city, and just beside it, the same McDonald's you've seen everywhere. The same menu, the same plastic tables, the same perfect familiarity. We can drop anywhere on Earth and know exactly where we are. The coordinates still work, we just don't. I was also talking about Bloodborne as like a good example of what to do. In Bloodborne, Revelation is horrifying because it breaks the illusion of safety. Once your insight grows high enough, you see the Great Ones clinging to the walls, their vast bodies and horrible appearances always having been there, you were just not able to see it. It's an epiphany so large, it has the power to drive you mad. And the player learns that there's a connection between understanding and madness. They're two sides of the same revelation. I think Bloodborne is a better example for what I'm trying to say than GeoGuessr. I think that really gets at the core of what I was trying to say Lovecraftian horror should be if done well. there just being more to the world than you're able to see or otherwise sense, and that understanding more drives you more towards madness. GeoGuessr in a way inverts that. Here, revelation is mundane. There are no hidden gods, no forbidden truths. Just infinite footage of roads, rooftops, cities, every mystery already digitized. It's a quieter kind of horror. The horror of knowing too much and feeling too little. The terror that maybe the world isn't unknowable at all, maybe it's perfectly knowable, and that is what is scary about it. Oh god, and I also had a whole section about... Let's talk about Junji Ito for a moment. Junji Ito, which is like the basic author you can go to as a video essayist when you want to write about horror. Aside from that one panel you might have seen before, The Enigma of Amigawa Fault is about horror of finding the perfect place. In the story, an earthquake uncovers a large mountainside with human-shaped holes carved into a mountain, and people start to realize it's holes that fit them perfectly. And people flock towards the area, and one by one they crawl inside, compelled by the recognition of the shape made for them. The story plays up the obsession coming from knowing that something fits you perfectly, or rather, the obsession of not knowing what will happen when you arrive. The horror isn't violence or monsters, it's a discovery that the world already has a place waiting for you, and you can't refuse it. And I really like Junji Ito still, but I think I've kind of outgrown it a little bit. Like, there's a lot of interesting stuff there. Unpopular opinion, I think he's a little bit overhyped. I think he just is... His talent lies in taking one concept, like compulsive obsession, like with the holes in the wall story, and he is really good at like getting at the essence of a certain type of horror. He has a talent of like taking this little thing that frightens you and designing a little short story around it. The character, no, you don't remember any characters, but there's a core fear that he's really good at, like just getting at. In a very literal sense, patterns consume people. It's a horror of compulsion. If a space is designed a certain way, we cannot help ourselves but follow instinct. And that geometry is everywhere around us. Every mall, every co-working space, every urban renewal project is another human-shaped hole, designed for someone exactly like us to step into. We fit perfectly, and that's the problem. GeoGuessr unintentionally recreates the same unease. Each street seems to be waiting for you to recognize it, to slot yourself into the logic of repetition. You're moving through an endless pattern of human-shaped holes, each promising orientation, but offering no escape. Computer code is intimately woven into every aspect of everyday life. Many spaces only function because software allows them to. The airport isn't an airport anymore when the scanners go offline. Then I had this whole part about software and algorithms and procedural generation, because it will like tie together airports and non-spaces. For example, think of a train station or an airport, and if all the software and all the technology fails, it completely loses its function. A checkout counter stops being part of a store the moment its payment system fails. Without software, places collapse into ordinary rooms. Lovecraft once wrote that the human mind was mercifully unequipped to correlate all its contents. But what if we built machines that can? For the most of history, mystery and unknown were features of the world, not flaws. The ocean had blank spots on the map where we could see monsters. Forests and plains had edges we could not cross. Now there are no gaps left. Every coastline mapped, every street photographed, every secret indexed. We haven't defeated the unknown, we've deleted it. And because there's nothing left to discover, all that remains is repetition. Procedural generation was once a trick of video games, a way to build infinite worlds without handcrafting every rock or hill. No Man's Sky promised a whole universe created by algorithms, each planet unique. Yet after a few hours, all that uniqueness began to blur. Every forest felt like a remix of the last one, every creature a familiar combination of limbs and textures. The promise of procedural generation is infinity. Infinite worlds, infinite cities, infinite content. But infinity, it turns out, is a terrible storyteller. In No Man's Sky, the first planet is breathtaking, the second fascinating, the third familiar, the fourth a copy. Each new variation is proof that there's nothing new to find. GeoGuessr gives you the same feeling. After enough rounds, it stops being about learning geography and starts being about pattern recognition, an exercise in déjà vu. You don't travel anymore, you tap through possibilities, and the more you click, the more the world feels like it's looping. It's the horror hidden inside all the smoothness, not chaos, but order taken too far. Not the unknown, but the infinitely known. A universe that can keep generating forever without ever creating meaning. Only like 6 pages in and it's like a third in. What was I thinking? Every click in GeoGuessr confirms that the world is exactly what we thought it would be. Endless, familiar, and completely mapped. The game's real tension is between knowing and not knowing. It's between knowledge and meaning. The world turns into its own museum. Each location becomes an exhibit of itself. Oh god, we go back to Junji Ito in The Long Dream. In The Long Dream, Junji Ito imagines a man whose sleep grows longer each night, years, then centuries, then millennia of dreaming. By the time he wakes up, his face and mind have stretched into something unrecognizable. He hasn't gained wisdom or perspective. He's just been awake too long. Again, it's like a very small horror idea taken to the extreme. I'm too sleepy a person to be scared by dreaming forever. So that doesn't really resonate in the horror sense with me, but it's an interesting thought about Lovecraftian or cosmic horror. Like the human mind doesn't understand the concept of infinity. So the idea of just doubling and doubling time to where he's dreaming for an infinite amount of time for his mind to understand or not understand. There's something interesting there. That's what infinity does to the human mind. The same logic hides inside the systems we've built. The procedurally generated world sounds exciting until we realize that the excitement depends on running out of things to see. What I like in horror is less the splattery, gory kind of stuff, but more on the psychological side than the mind-breaking. I was recording footage of me playing GeoGuessr, and some of the things I was spot on, and some of the things I was really horrible at, especially if it's like more like rural areas, which kind of made me think that, do both of these destroy my thesis right there? Because if my claim is that everything is the same, then why am I good at parts of it? Like if I'm dropped into a city center and I immediately know where I am, doesn't that negate what I'm trying to say with the thesis that everywhere looks exactly the same? And then again, if I don't know where I am and I'm in the middle of nowhere, that means that not every place is the same. That this is a very unique wilderness that I do not know because I have not experienced this type of area in the world, and most of the world will be places I have not experienced yet. Either the sameness is still unique enough that I can recognize it and immediately pinpoint, or at least people who are better than me at the game can immediately pinpoint where they are, because it's not just copy-paste. Or there's places that are really unique so that I have no point of reference of even placing them, which also means that my thesis is wrong. So that was a fun realization. But at some point you realize you don't have to understand, you don't have to do it if you don't want to. You can just turn it into a new project, something really weird that's just for you, but that's fun to you. And GeoGuessr stops being a horror game again and just a game about exploration of ideas and seeing new things that may look familiar, but are also kind of new. And in the end, it's just fun. And at some point when you're confronted with the huge scale of possibilities and things to do and things to see, that you realize you don't have to see it all or do it all. And if you don't like this project that you only want to do because it's your project for yourself, you don't have to. You don't have to do it anymore. You can just toss the script and use the idea for something else, something that's more fun to you. And even though it's just for you, it is just for you. And why not? Enjoy it. But maybe all this sameness is intentional to distract us, who knows? Maybe everything that's happening is just happening for no reason. And we can just go on and ignore it, or we can do something about it and finally do the project, finally toss that script, finally do the thing, finally close YouTube, get up, and do the project you wanted to do, because why not? Having a really big project in your mind is scary because nobody's forcing you to do it. But at the same time, you have to complete it. There's a certain compulsion, so you have to urge to keep working and just writing more and more. And if the script is already 40 pages long, you will just continue writing it because why not? Because you have to get out all your ideas. And at some point, it's scary and the scale is just too much and you know you will never be able to finish it. And even if you finish it, what if nobody cares? And then you realize you don't have to do this. Just because it feels like you should do this, and your mind is telling you put so much effort into it, you don't have to do it. You can just toss the script, keep the good parts, and turn it into something new. Something that's more fun to you. Something that artistically fulfills you in a different way. And even if this project is only for you, that's also fine. Not everything needs to be done for a reason or for a specific goal. Sometimes you can do things just for yourself, because the world is infinite and vast, and you're tiny, and that's comforting sometimes, because not doing that project doesn't change the world in any way. So just delete your art, do the thing, or don't do it. And if the sameness and repetition is too much, just take a break. If your passion project turns into an unbearable amount of work, just change it up. And that's why GeoGuessr is a cosmic horror game. Alright, if you made it all the way to the end, thank you first of all. This one's a little bit weird and different. After my Hades 2 video getting a lot of views, I was thinking if I should just cash in on the trend and complain about any video game story I don't like, which I could do. There's a lot to talk about, but then again, that's not fun and that's not what this hobby is supposed to be. So I hope at least some of you enjoyed this one, and I definitely can and will do more normal ones or just me talking about storytelling. But this has been on my mind and I just wanted to get that done. This was supposed to be a more sincere video essay, but then I just didn't really have fun with it anymore. So I decided it's Halloween anyway, so why not just spin it into this completely weird direction? And yeah, I hope at least some of you enjoyed that. If not, this video was for me.